Well, hello everybody. I'm Desi Serna, author of Fretboard Theory, Guitar Theory for Dummies, and Guitar Rhythm and Techniques for Dummies. And welcome to my live guitar lesson here. This is an opportunity for me to answer questions and talk about things and teach on certain topics. I've already received a handful of questions that I plan to cover, but you're welcome to interact with me here live. If you want to follow the link to the actual Google Hangouts on Air page, you can, I believe you have to request to join it, and then you can submit some questions. So I'll be watching my email and messages here as I present this lesson so that you could join in with some comments and questions. You can also comment directly on the Hangouts on Air link that I put in on Facebook. I suppose you could comment on Twitter as well. I'll check in on there just to make sure I don't miss anything. So before we get started with some questions and answers, and before I get started with the questions I'm already prepared to answer, I just wanted to update you. A couple of weeks ago, I played a little bit of Cliffs of Dover for one of the live lessons, and I mentioned that I was working on putting together some instruction on that song with tab. Well, it's completed and it was recently uploaded to YouTube. That's a free lesson. That's a free video, so you don't have to be a customer or a member of my website to access that. So you can just go to my YouTube channel and just look for my Cliffs of Dover lesson. What I did is I focused on the first two verses and choruses. Cliffs of Dover is just an absolutely epic guitar instrumental. It's an advanced level. It's really beyond advanced level. I mean, it's just it's super advanced. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to tackle the whole song, but there's just so much good stuff to learn from it, and it's such a popular guitar song that I wanted to at least try to teach on a portion of it. So I chose the first two verses and choruses. And you get to learn the main melodic hook and everything. And I've got it all tabbed out. You can follow along with a PDF tab file or a Guitar Pro file if you're a Guitar Pro user. I've got backing tracks. I've got information on how I set up a guitar sound for it. So be sure to check that out. And I also recently uploaded some new pentatonic scale songs, some really simple, even beginner level guitar riffs and bass lines and even a guitar solo that are good examples of using the pentatonic scale patterns that I teach in my guitar theory books and video courses. So that's the update on Cliffs of Dover. And from here, I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to jump right into some of the questions that I've already received. And the first question is, how can you improve your vibrato technique? And I've actually received this question many times before. Guitarists are interested, I'm assuming, if I understand the question correctly, in just developing their vibrato technique. You know, when you watch players play, particularly those of the kind of blues rock genre, your Eric Claptons or your Stevie Ray Vaughns and that sort of thing. You know, B.B. King, you notice that there is always some level of vibrato. So instead of just fretting notes and just letting them ring without, you know, wiggling the fingers at all, you know. Instead, guitar players are going to do something like. So for example, no vibrato with vibrato, right? No vibrato. So the question is, how can you begin to develop that technique? So let's talk about that a little bit. And I'm actually going to reference my book. Here it is, Guitar Rhythm and Technique for Dummies. I talk about a variety of techniques in here, and I don't go into too much depth with each one, but I give you enough so that you can kind of grasp the concept and apply it to your playing. So I've got a little exercise in here in the book where you're playing basically an A minor pentatonic, like I was just doing, and I just demonstrate that you can play a note and just hold it and let it sustain, or you can wiggle it, and I'll start slowly if you watch here. So you're kind of pulling it away from pitch and bringing it back. And vibrato can be slow, it could be quick. And I have you play like the root A here at the, what is it, the 9th fret of the D string, then you can go to the minor 3rd. And you work on fretting the note and playing it without vibrato, and then you add the vibrato. So now the question is, well, most people are like, well, I get that, but I just can't get the movement down. So how do you get the movement down? So we'll talk about that. Different guitar players have different ways of adding vibrato. If you watch the way that Eric Clapton adds vibrato, it's different. It's a little bit different than the movement you see in Stevie Ray Vaughan's hands, or maybe even B.B. King's hands, or someone else. So, some players will kind of push and pull. Like, I think Clapton kind of releases his grip and kind of pushes and pulls a little bit. Some players will kind of they'll twist their wrist like this. So you see Stevie Ray Vaughan do that a lot. So sometimes he'd grab a couple of strings. B.B. King would be pretty, he would lift his hand and get some wild movement in there, So I developed my vibrato in my early days when I was, learning guitar, and in particular when I was learning lead guitar. Initially, I was a big Kiss fan, so I used to listen to all that old Kiss stuff back in the 70s. And so, I was kind of following, Ace Frehley would do stuff like, or and so I would just listen and just try to mimic what I was hearing. Later I got into Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I used to watch his videos, particularly Live at the El Mocambo. I remember I probably watched that 1,000 times. And sometimes I wasn't even sure what he was doing, but I would just watch his hands and try to mimic the movement of his hands. And of course it sounded terrible initially, but over time, as I just focused on trying to figure out what notes he was playing and the rhythms he was playing it in, and just continually mimicking the movement of his hands, things started to come together, And the way that he added vibrato seemed to be easier for me to mimic than some other players. So, I've mentioned that different players had different ways of adding vibrato. They have different movements. And, it's important to listen to them and watch them and see if you can mimic their movements. But you're not really trying to copy any player's movement. You're trying to figure out how you can get vibrato with your own hands. So somewhere in that process, you're going to figure out the particular techniques or movements or method of vibrato that works well for you, and then you just kind of go with it. So, each player is unique and sounds a little bit different. They won't always use the same type of vibrato as the next player, and you don't have to master everybody's style. You know, Eric Clapton is not a master of everybody's vibrato style. He's a master at his vibrato style. B.B. King was not a master at every single vibrato style. He was a master of his vibrato style. So you just want to figure out how you can incorporate vibrato into your playing and what makes sense to you, and then just work on it and develop it. And so you really got to do it a lot. You got to play those songs. You got to move your hands, and it's just as simple as wiggling your finger, and you got to just keep working at it until your muscles find that place where they can move quickly without where you're relaxed and you can move quickly and you're not moving too far away from the pitch. In other words, you don't want to do something like, that's going to sound bad, you know. Also, you want to learn when do you apply vibrato and when do you not apply vibrato. You wouldn't necessarily want to do it on every note. All right. Maybe if you wanted to sound a little weird, but you know, so you want to pay attention to when players apply vibrato and when they don't. So. You know, I mentioned Stevie Ray Vaughan. By the way, the song Crossfire was one that I worked on a lot back in the day, and that's a great example. Stevie Ray Vaughan's up here in the 12th position playing E minor pentatonic, you know. And he's got licks in between all the different phrases, you know. Or so that would be a good song to learn how to add vibrato if you're trying to do that sort of bluesy vibrato, which I think is what most people are referring to. You can add vibrato in different ways. I mean, you hear. Well, I guess we'll stay with Stevie Ray Vaughan. I mean, think about Lenny, where he adds vibrato with the tremolo system, you know. Right? And some players will actually use the tremolo bar to add vibrato in place of some left-hand vibrato. So I don't really have anything prepared necessarily, but gosh, just, you know, at the top of my head, I know that Alex Lifeson from Rush uses a lot of whammy bar vibrato. Of course, he uses a lot of left-hand vibrato as well. But anyway, back to A minor pentatonic. So you can do something like, or you know, this is a great tool to use, and maybe it's going to be a part of your signature style, and you'll use it for vibrato, you know. Right? I guess, you know, while we're on the topic, I mean, you could always use a slide as well, you know. Whoops, something like I don't play a whole lot of slide, and whenever I'm called to play slide, I have to practice and get some of my slide chops up to par before I play the part. But and slide is another area where it's another technique where you have to learn how you can kind of relax and just your muscles have to learn how to kind of find that zone where they can just where your hand can wiggle and perform that vibrato without you being tense. You know, you gotta loosen up. I think in my book on rhythm and technique, I talk about, you know, if you've got like a cup or something, and if you've ever just kind of stirred it up like this, just that movement where you're not tense, you know, and you're kind of relaxed and you're just kind of letting it go. That's kind of similar to what a slide player does with the slide, or it could be similar to just your hand in general, you know. All right, let's. Oh, well, you know what? I just wanted to talk a little bit more about vibrato because I just finished Cliffs of Dover, and Eric Johnson, who's a master of so many techniques, uses vibrato in that song as well. And he's very particular about when he frets a note and just lets it sustain without vibrato, and when he adds vibrato. And often when he adds vibrato, he adds a lot. Right? So instead of it's you hear that vibrato in the end there? Here it is without it. How about this next leg? I add vibrato on the D right there. He does a very quick, rapid vibrato. Here it is without it. Hear the difference? So you could take a look at that lesson that I mentioned earlier. There are some good examples of using vibrato in that song. And more than just knowing the physical technique, you want to know when it's appropriate to use it. You don't want to overuse it. You don't want to underuse it. Okay, so that answers, hopefully, the question on vibrato. So learn a lot of songs that have vibrato in them. Learn some solos, learn some riffs, watch the players, mimic their movement, listen carefully, and get it down. If you're watching players and you're marveling at their vibrato technique and you're wondering why you don't have it in your playing and you haven't developed that skill, but you haven't put in any time to learning their songs, learning their riffs, learning their solos, well, there's your problem right there, you know. So as with anything, you've got to learn parts and you got to work on it. I mean, I learned there's little nuances of Eric Johnson's style and playing that I learned and picked up on because I've been spending the last several weeks learning and practicing and memorizing and performing his song Cliffs of Dover. So find songs that have vibrato you like and learn them and practice them. All right, the next question, well, actually before I get to the next question, let's just make sure that more questions aren't coming in. All right, looks like we're okay there. And I don't think I turned on the Q&A, did I? Q&A is open on the Google Hangouts. Okay, next question is somebody asked, how do you read a rhythm chart? And I get a lot of questions like this where people are like, should I learn how to read music? You know, how do you read these charts that people that musicians read? You know, do you need to learn how to read rhythms? Do you need to learn how to read the actual notation and the pitches? Can you just follow the chords? There's a lot that we could cover here. I'm going to just give you one. I'm going to give you one example. So I've got a chart a rhythm chart in front of me, and I'm going to share my screen so you can see it. Okay, so for example, all right, I'm playing at church this week and we're doing this song, We Believe. I hope I'm not violating any copyrights. I probably am, but I'm just using this for an example. So we're doing this song here, We Believe, and this is the rhythm chart. And this is what we're given as a band. And I received these, this is a church gig, but sometimes if I'm doing something that isn't a church gig or maybe a session or something like that, you're often given a rhythm chart. And what a rhythm chart is it kind of just gives you the basic structure of the song. It tells you what the key is, what the key signature is, what the basic chords are. If there's any essential melodic parts, it would be notated. Other than that, you can see most of these measures don't really have anything notated in them, and that's because the player, whether you're a bass player or a guitar player, I happen to be playing bass on this song on Sunday, but I'm going to demonstrate it to you today as if I were playing guitar. You're expected to be able to just kind of copy your own rhythm and fill the space, and they kind of give you like a general outline or some suggestions. You know, this is going to be somewhat quarter note based. Here you're going to let things sustain a little bit more. These are whole notes. You know, they just tell you where the main sections of the song are. You know, here's a crescendo telling you to build and get louder. And then, you know, sometimes this is important. Look at this. This is a half measure here, just 2 beats, so you wouldn't want to miss that. Here's a rhythm where it looks like the band is going to lock up on a specific rhythm that ought to be played, and you've got some more at the end here. So this is why I say it's good to learn how to read music, but you don't have to learn how to read music like a concert violinist. You don't have to be an expert sight reader necessarily. You don't have to memorize the position of every note, you know, all along the fretboard necessarily. You just want to learn the basics of music. Just understand basic key signatures and basic rhythms and notation. Excuse me here, I'm going to cough. And I did cough. But you didn't hear me because I turned my mic off. So, you know, you really want to know how to read basic rhythms and, you know, stuff. So you could get like a Mel Bay book and just learn like maybe the first 2 or 3 books. Get up to where you work on 16th notes. So, okay, let me show you what I might do. So let's say I showed up to band rehearsal and they put this chart in front of me. All right. So, okay, I know that, all right, I'm in the key of D, and I've got a D chord, then I got a G chord with a D in the bass. I know that the tempo, see it says worship ballad, quarter note equals 65. I don't have my metronome on now, but I'm assuming it's probably around, I'm guessing that's close to 65. So at the beginning there it says MP, that stands for, you know, mezzo piano. That means moderately soft. You know, again, these little traditional musical terms, it's good to kind of know the basic ones. You know, down here you see this stands for mezzo forte, so that means that, you know, it's getting kind of progressively louder here. Notice it also says full band groove, but no heavy electric presence yet. This part here in the notation is actually for piano, so that is a F sharp and a D. Well, that makes sense. So, and then it changes to what is that? G and D, which makes sense because we're switching to a G chord. So, you know, sometimes there's a part that's might be necessary for you to play. So I'm going to play this part. You I might transpose it up an octave. Sometimes you might have a part for guitar or that is notated because it's kind of important, and you're expected to be able to read it, to some degree. Typically, at least in a praise band situation, we also get to hear some versions of the song. So if you got a good ear and you can pick up on stuff by ear, you can do it that way. But you still need to have the chart just so you understand the basic structure. The structure of the song might be different than the recording that they gave you as a reference. And when you show up to rehearsal or a session or whatever, you're expected to be able to literally be on the same page as the other musicians. So when they say, okay, we're going back to, measure 39, the chorus, you need to know how to get to measure 39, the chorus. Or if they say, we're gonna add in a repeat, but we're gonna take out that 2/4 measure, you need to know what they're talking about. Or if they say, okay, we want the whole band to, diamond, as they say, here on beat 1, and then let's hit beat 4 together. You need to know that stuff. You can't just sit around and say to them, well, you guys figure it out, you play it, and then I'll listen to you, and then after the fact I'll realize what you mean. If you're going to be a serious musician, you need to be able to look at the chart and take some instruction and direction and then jump in and play. So I'm going to start here at the beginning, D. And I'm just strumming and just kind of comping my own rhythm here. See, we got a verse now. And I don't even know if there would really be much electric guitar in this at this point. And when you're playing with the whole band and you got all the instrumentation there, and especially once you've listened to a reference version of the song, you kind of have some idea of when you're in, when you're out, and kind of generally speaking, what type of parts you're going to play during each section, So here I'm at measure 13 now, and we got a full band groove, but no heavy electric presence yet. So this means you probably got to hold a drum beat, the bass is grooved and everything. So the electric guitar is probably still pretty sparse, It might even be playing up in a higher register or something, Following the chord changes here. So then we get to this chorus here, and it's saying, add electric, presence, drums out. So the drums are out, and piano play quarter note pulse. So this might be, big chorus, but the drums have dropped out, so the guitar might just be doing some whole notes or something, which is how it's notated, so that's probably the case, Right? And then notice here it says like the intro, so a piano or some instrument's going to pick up on that part there. Whoops. And so on. So I'm going to skip ahead. Here as you get into the chorus again, this is the crescendo. So this is a cue. All right, we're going to get louder, and this means forte. That means loud. So this is loud. This might even be, a point in the song when the guitar player might kick on some overdrive. So, it's kind of up to me to decide what register am I going to be in. High register, low register. What's my rhythm going to be? Is it going to be quarter notes or maybe some version of eighth notes? I kind of have to listen to the instrumentation around me and fill in. Am I just going to play the changes, or am I going to like play some kind of arpeggiate some chords and play, you know, kind of around the changes? Am I going to do something like, you know, I was just following these chords right here, and I was kind of picking parts of their chord shapes or arpeggio patterns, you know. So this is where this is where you need to have experience. You know, if you've learned a lot of songs and played a lot of songs and learned the parts, then you have all sorts of ideas of how you could create a guitar part based on this. And you are expected to comp your part. That means come up with your own part based on this basic structure and these chords, and of course listening to some of the other instrumentation around you. So here we get to the bridge, aggressive building tom groove. So this is, you know, even more aggressive. So what do we got here, you know? So maybe the guitar might drive some power chords. You know, when you're playing with a whole band, you kind of want to find your frequency. So you might listen to the band and you're like, you know what, we've got enough going on in this register here. It doesn't sound good for the guitar to be down there too. So you might come up into a higher register, you know, and do something like, you know, right? I mean, I'm not sure. It would all depend on what's going on around me. You want to listen to where is there space to fill, which frequency sounds good. So I'm going to pick up right here, and it says keep building. So it's just, you know, it's getting more and more intense here. And check this out. You got a measure of 2, 4. So that's 1, 2, then 1, 2, 3, 4. So we came from the key of D. We had only 2 measures here. It looks like the whole band is expected to hold this rhythm, and this is actually leading you into a new key, the key of E. So let me start right here. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, E. And so it keeps going E, following the same progression, but now everything's a whole step higher in the key of E. And here it builds, and you continue with this chorus. And I'm going to start right here because I want to show you how you play some of these changes. So this is probably important. The whole band, the drums and everything are probably going to lock up on those changes. So this is an example where you see how you don't need to be an expert sight reader, but you need to understand that this is beat 1, 2, here's beat 3, you hold it through beat 4, you rest on beat 1, and then you hit on beat 2. Simple stuff like that, you know. You need to be able to read just basic chord charts. You know, here's an A, a B, right? This is an A over a C sharp, so that's A with its third in the bass. A B with its third D sharp in the bass, and then E. And sometimes in this case, the bass player is going to play the bass notes, so you could ignore them. You can just go A, B, E. You know, you can just go. Let the bass player do the. Or sometimes maybe you don't want to play the chords. Maybe you do want to follow the bass like I just did. How do you know? It's up to you. It's your call. You play with the band, you listen to the other instrumentation. What sounds good? Should you follow the bass? Should you not? Should your chords be in a low register or a high register? It's all up to you. Okay, I had to take a drink of water and cough there for a second. Sorry, I just got, that one of those tickles in the back of the throat, so not sure why. All right, I also popped an Altoid in. Maybe that'll help. Okay, so I hope that answers the question on, how do you read a basic rhythm chart? I just pulled that out because I will be playing that this weekend, and I actually was not scheduled to play at my church this weekend, but they called me about an hour before rehearsal, and they said, our bass player has just canceled. Could you come play some bass for us? And I didn't even have a chance to look at the charts or anything. I just grabbed my iPad, my bass, and I played this Paul Reed Smith SE Kestrel bass and a Sans amp. The bass driver DI is wonderful, and went to church and pulled up the iPad, and there it was. And we just kind of played through it, and sometimes with a song like I just showed you, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You're playing fairly simple chord progressions and stuff, just a couple little spots where you want to pay attention to some alternate bass notes or a measure with a couple of beats dropped, a key change, that sort of thing. If it was, every once in a while we come across a song that's the arrangement requires more listening, more rehearsal, and more practice, and I wouldn't necessarily be able to just show up and play it. But that is how the process works, and that works whether you're playing at church or something that's just a regular gig or a session. And that just shows you why it's a good idea to understand the basics of music, and why I say you don't have to learn how to play like a concert violinist or anything. Just learn the basics and basic rhythms and that sort of thing. Now let me just explain one more time, because as I was demonstrating that song, I mentioned you comp your own rhythm, you decide what register you want to play in, you find your frequency, you decide whether you want to play the chord changes or play some sort of arpeggiation or something that's based on the chord tones, that sort of thing. But the big question is, well, how do you know what to play, though? I know that you have all these options, but how do you know what to play? How do you know what's right? And that really just comes with experience and with learning a lot of songs. I have learned thousands of songs, literally thousands. And when I say learn them, I don't mean I saw their basic chords written in a fake book and I strummed, D, C, and G. I mean, I sat down, I listened to them, I worked out specifically what the guitar was doing in the songs, how they were voicing their chords, where they were playing with the fretboard, how they were picking their arpeggios, the lead lines, everything. So I played in bands for years where I had to learn songs. I learned songs on my own just because I wanted to learn them. And over time, you pick up on all of these different techniques or stylistic techniques or composition techniques or all these different manners of playing. And then when you're in a situation where you're given a basic rhythm chart and you're called to just kind of make up your own guitar part, it becomes a lot easier because you have all of these different examples and ideas to draw from. And you also want to pay attention to the other instrumentation. So like I said, if it's really full in the low end and maybe that low mid range, you should recognize that and say, well, I don't want to add more there, so I'll stay away from power chords in the low range. Let me go up to maybe some power chords or some triads or something up in the higher range. Or vice versa. Maybe you're playing with some singers or some other instrumentalists, and they're taking up a lot of space up here, but you notice that there's some space in the low mids or something that needs to be filled. That's a perfect opportunity for you to play some power chords and fill that space. So you kind of find your frequency, you figure out how you can play, how you can fill space and fit in with the other instrumentation. So I could go on all day talking about this. I hope that is helpful, and we are going to move on. Let me just check in here. Messages. Good. Okay. All right, next question is, this is kind of a hard question for me to pin down, but I think what they were saying is, how can two guitar players play a solo at the same time? And moreover, how can two guitar players compose two different but complementary parts? I could spend hours and hours demonstrating this, so I'll try to give you a quick answer. First off, there are many different ways that you can compose two different types of guitar parts and combine them. I do talk about this briefly in Fretboard Theory Volume 2, the very last chapter. I talk about playing pedal tones, and that's a technique where you let some pitches sustain while you have other pitches moving around them. And oftentimes this is done with two guitars. So you might have one guitar that's doing something like what do I want to do? Let's say you've got a guitar doing something like that. Then you have another guitar that's going. That's just one example. So totally different parts. One was just repeating this melodic figuration up here in a higher register. One was playing in a lower register. So here's an example of how you kind of find your frequency. How can you do something without interfering with each other and taking up the same space? Generally speaking, there's times when you could be taking up the same space, but doing so in a manner that works. So that's a pedal tone technique, and I do talk about that in Fretboard Theory Volume 2, and I give you some examples of how you could take two different parts and combine them. There are many other types of ways that you could compose two different types of guitar parts, but that's just one example, and that happens to be instruction that I have available for you now. But the question is then, how can two guitar players solo at the same time, or play parts at the same time? So the answer, the way that you find the answer is easier than you might think. And guess what? It involves learning songs. You find songs that have two guitars playing together, and you learn them. That's how you learn how two guitars play together. So just to reference another lesson that I already have available, Hotel California, okay? All right, the whole last section of that song, you've got Don Felder and Joe Walsh trading guitar solos, and then they come together to play this harmonized lead line. So how did they play together for that song? Well, to start off, they traded solos. You know, Don Felder comes in first. He plays for a while. I think he plays through the whole progression. Then he passes it off to Joe Walsh, you know. He plays for a while, then he passes it back to Don Felder. Then they take shorter solos and they pass it back and forth. And then finally they get to that section where they play the harmonized part, you know. Let me clear my loop out here. We'll start a new one. Two, three, four. Okay, so one guitar is going, and another guitar is up here playing an arpeggio based, playing chord tones based on the same chord, in this case B minor, but up a step higher in the triad. So when you put that together, the first one, which I recorded in my Boss RC3 loop station, let me play it and I'll do the second one and you'll hear them both together. They sound like this. Got it? I've got a whole lesson on Hotel California on YouTube. It's free. Check it out. I show you how to play the different. I just do the solo section. I show you how to play the solos and play those harmonized parts at the end. So that's a great way to learn how two guitar players can play together. In the rock genre, there are bands like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, the Scorpions. I remember these bands back from the late 70s and the early 80s, and they had each one of these bands had multiple lead guitar players, and so they would often play riffs and solos where they would harmonize together. So they had parts that were specifically composed to go together and create harmony. You generally won't have guitar players that are just improvising and jamming a solo independently at the same time without there being any relationship to it. I mean, I suppose it could happen. Sometimes, you know, you'll hear guitar jams or something where everybody solos, you know, and it's just a big giant solo, and it's kind of, honestly, it's kind of a mess, but it's kind of neat, and it just kind of adds to the intensity, and there are times when I guess we can tolerate that sort of thing, and it can sound good. But in that case, there's nothing you really need to learn. You have a bunch of soloists that are just all improvising independently without really paying attention to the others. But at those moments when you hear things come together where it sounds like they're playing with purpose and there's harmony, then obviously they've worked something out. And Hotel California would be a good example of that. You hear that at the end where they obviously compose those parts to go together. So someone asked about bluegrass music. It appears in styles like bluegrass music that you've got a lot of instruments that are capable of taking the lead line, and it appears at times that they're all playing. Are they all playing lead? Not necessarily. Usually you've got, in bluegrass, you've got all this instrumentation and you have different instruments that are playing different lines that all contribute to this kind of bed of instrumentation that then one lead line will kind of play over, you know, and they kind of usually trade off. So the banjo's going to kind of take the lead for a verse or chorus, and the other instrumentation is playing in a manner where it kind of lays down, you know, the right groundwork, right kind of bed of harmony for the banjo to play over. Then the fiddle player takes his turn, then maybe the guitar player or dobro or another instrument. You usually don't have them all playing lead at the same time. Usually one instrument's playing lead and the others are playing parts that all come together to harmonize a rhythmic a rhythm, what's the word I'm looking for here? A rhythm bed. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So look into some of those bands that I mentioned. Look into Hotel California. Also, the song Freebird comes to mind. You know, at the end there, when they get into the... You've got the lead guitar solo. And if you listen to the recording, there are times when you actually hear two soloists overlapping each other. I'm guessing that when they tracked that song, they just had each guy play through the whole thing and just improvise and jam independently, and then as they were mixing it down, they faded in and they faded out. different solos, sometimes overlapping them, sometimes letting them play over one another for a period of time. Usually it focuses on one particular guitar solo or soloist, and there's just a little bit of overlapping in between. Perhaps if you listen to some live versions, I'm going to guess uh, that song probably has moments where, because Lynyrd Skynyrd, I think, had what, 3 lead guitar players? Now, they generally did not all play an improvised lead line at the same time. Usually one person was taking the lead and the other people were playing parts that were kind of harmonically supporting that lead. But sometimes they could harmonize parts, and sometimes just for the intensity, yeah, they would just all kind of improvise just to create a big ball of sound. So you could check that out, and that might give you some ideas of how you could do that. So that covers the question, how do 2 guitars play a solo at the same time? If you have any more questions regarding it, let me know. We are going to move on. All right, next question. How can you set and reach guitar playing goals? So I get a common question I get is people say, you know, I play guitar, I've been playing for years, I pick it up, I play a little bit every day, but I just don't feel like I'm making progress, I'm not getting anywhere, I just kind of, I don't really have any structure, and you know, I just pick it up and I just noodle around a little bit here, there, and I put it down and that's it, and you know, how can I do better than that? So my answer is that, you know, yes, if you pick up every day, if you pick up your guitar every day and you play without structure or you play without trying to reach a certain goal, then yes, your playing's not going to have any structure and you're not going to reach any goals. So the answer is you have to structure your practice time, you have to set a goal, you have to work towards something. If you're not moving towards something, then you're not going to get anywhere. So let me give you some ideas of how you could set goals, and then in turn how you could structure your playing to meet those goals so you make some progress and you get somewhere. So um, you need to uh, well, here. So, you know, you could do a couple of things. Number one, you could play in a band. You could form a neighborhood band. You could do a block party in your neighborhood. Maybe you could have opportunity to play at church as well if you go to church. You could kind of set that as your goal. And when you do that, well, then you have to learn songs and you have to rehearse, and the pressure's on, and that's going to cause you to immediately structure your practice time instead of just picking up your instrument and just noodling around here and there and just playing whatever. All of a sudden now you gotta get those rhythm charts in front of you. You've got to listen to the song. You got to work out some of the parts from the song. You got to memorize it and practice it and get it down. You've got to go play with the band for rehearsal or play for your performance. Maybe you're playing at a block party, or maybe you're gonna, you know, play at the corner pub down the street or whatever. Play a set of music. I don't know what the setting might be, but find something. You know, it's through those experiences that's when you really have to learn more, and that's when you really have to stretch yourself, and that's when you really um, uh, you know, you're working towards a goal, and you also have something to show for yourself too. It's like you did the gig, you know, you know, so you feel some sense of accomplishment, and you learn some new songs in the process, and there was some new techniques that you had to get down to play those songs that you practiced. So just setting that type of goal is going to make a difference. You could do something like plan maybe you don't want to play in church, or you're not going to play with a band or a block party or something, you know, but you can still set a goal. You can set a goal to learn a new song. You know, maybe there's a song that you've always enjoyed the guitar in for years and years, but you never actually learned it. So just say, I'm going to learn that song, or I'm going to learn a portion of it, you know. For example, I just worked on Cliffs of Dover. Cliffs of Dover is extremely challenging, even for me. I mean, it's really kind of beyond my skill set, but I knew that I could still play a portion of it. I knew that if I slowed it down, that would help. You know, in my instructional video on it, I actually played it at 90% of its tempo. I slowed it down a little bit. and you wouldn't have known that if I didn't tell you. My point is here is that don't be intimidated by a song because it's played by some expert guitar player who is clearly more skilled than you. You can still learn a portion of it, you can learn how to simplify it, you can slow it down, and you can still enjoy learning it just as much, and you can still sound, you know, nearly as good when you play it. So set a goal to learn a song. Maybe you set a goal to learn a song or to compose your own song or finish something that you were working on. Then you can take it a step further. Instead of just sitting at home alone playing the song, why don't you decide that you're going to film it? Maybe you're going to make a YouTube video that you can just share with your friends or that you can just watch yourself. So again, you've got a goal, you've got something that you're working toward, and you'll have something to show for it at the end. So I worked my butt off on that Cliffs of Dover lesson. I worked very hard on my Hotel California lesson. I got a lesson on this guitar solo, Sweet Child of Mine. I have tons of videos on YouTube, and some of them I had to work very hard on because they were new and they were challenging to me, and they gave me that goal to reach toward, and they gave me something to practice every day, so my practice had become more structured. And then they gave me something to show for myself. So it was nice to have a video that I could sit back and watch, that I could share with friends and share with my followers and my customers. And of course, I get feedback on all those videos, and people say, "Oh, I love this video. Great job. You sound good." So that's good, and that's motivating. And there's no reason, you don't have to be, a published author and running an instructional business like I do to enjoy some of these same benefits. You can upload your own video, you can share it with your friends, you can have a whole catalog. Maybe your goal is that you're going to take your top 10 favorite guitar songs, you're going to learn how to play versions of them that are fitting for your skill set, and you're going to record them. Maybe you're going to make an audio recording of them. It doesn't necessarily have to be a video. You're just going to make your audio recording of them so you can make your own little CD, and you can do it yourself, with GarageBand or Logic or any of the recording software that's available. Maybe you're going to hire someone. You get your parts down, you say, I'm going to go to a studio, or I'm going to hire a guy because I don't want to learn all the ins and outs of recording software, and you just say, I want to record myself playing some of these songs. It could be your own songs, it could be cover songs, it doesn't matter. It's just so you have something to do and you can enjoy the process, and you have a goal, and you'll have something to show at the end for yourself at the end of it. And for yourself, share it with your friends, your family, your kids. It doesn't have to be something that you sell. I don't even sell any of my own CDs and stuff, because there just really isn't any demand, and it's not worth the money putting into it. Everybody wants my guitar lessons, so I put all my effort into making books and videos, but I still work on music on my own time, and it's just something I do for my own enjoyment, and I share with other people, and that's okay, and you can do the same thing. So to get back to our question, and that is, how, if you're playing a stagnant, if you feel like you have no structure, if you feel like you're always playing the same things, you're not making any progress, how can you get out of that rut? And the answer is, you want to set goals for yourself and work towards goals. Make it a goal to learn some songs, to record yourself playing songs, make some videos, have fun with it. If your budget allows, hire a professional videographer and go somewhere and get something professionally filmed of you just playing whatever, a 2 or 3 minute song that you play well, just something that you can do, and so you have something to show for yourself and all your years of guitar playing. So I hope that answers the question, and if you have more questions on that, you can send them my way. And we need to wrap things up here soon, but I got one more topic I want to talk about. And that is a question, what does it mean to superimpose a chord or a scale? And this question's timing is perfect because there is superimposing going on in the song Cliffs of Dover by Eric Johnson, which I just completed. So I've got some good examples for you here. So to superimpose something, it's this process of layering one tonality over something else to suggest an entirely different tonality. So for example, let's take a D chord. Here's a D major chord. And it makes a D major tonality. But if you take the notes of D, and what if you played them over a G? Or, here's another idea. What if you tuned your guitar? Let me tune up real quick. Something's out of whack. Actually, I have not changed these strings in a while. And well, I can tell. Might have to change them soon. Well, let's see if this is any better. Okay, so I'm playing a D chord, which makes a D tonality, but what if I played it over a G, right? Well, when you play D by itself, you hear D, F sharp, and A, and it sounds like a D major triad, right? But if you hear G in the bass position, all of a sudden the D, F sharp, and A no longer sound like a root, third, and fifth. Now they sound like a fifth. The F sharp sound, the D sounds like a fifth. The F sharp sounds like a major 7. And the A sounds like a 9, so you have like a major 9 sound, right? That's a D major 9. Here's another way to do it. Here's another form of D. Maybe up here. Or how about like this? I'm taking D like this, you know, regular E form bar chord. I'm just taking, and I'm putting a G in there, so it's right. That's so we're taking that D and we're putting it over a G, and it's suggesting a different tonality. It no longer sounds like D. It sounds like G major 9. And Eric Johnson does this all over Cliffs of Dover. There's sections where it's on a G, but he would play a D, a simple D major arpeggio pattern. But it doesn't sound like a D major arpeggio pattern. It sounds like a G major 9. So here I'm just taking D. Think about D in the open position here. And just go up an octave. Well, you got to fret the D now, so. And he would play part of this arpeggio pattern, and he would lead right into a G with it. So he'd go like. Of course, the bass player is holding down the G there. He would also do. Actually, let me see. There's a couple of spots where he does that, you know. Or he does stuff like hitting on the F sharp there. Or you could also superimpose a scale. So, for example, there are areas in Cliffs of Dover where over the G chord, Johnson plays, instead of the G major pentatonic like you'd expect, he plays the D major pentatonic like this. Over G, and that's a form of superimposing. And what happens is when you play D major pentatonic, you get an F sharp in there, which is the major 7 of G. And so it creates like a G major 7 sound or a G major 9 sound. Actually, the only difference between G major pentatonic and D major pentatonic is that G major pentatonic has a G and D major pentatonic major pentatonic does not. It has an F sharp. So the only difference in the scale is one note. You change the G to F sharp. So instead of it's and when you take your G major pentatonic and you change the G's to F sharp, your pattern 1 becomes pattern 3 of D major pentatonic. It would look like this. This would be pattern 4, D major pentatonic. And there's sections in Cliffs of Dover where you hear Eric Johnson playing. You know, you could think of it two different ways. You could think, well, he's playing, you know, notes related to G, but he's switched the G to F sharp. Or you could think, well, he's just playing D major pentatonic patterns. He's superimposing it over G to get a G major 7 or a G major 9 sort of sound. That's right out of D major pentatonic. There's also that section at the end of the song, not at the end of my lesson, but in the song where he goes, and that's all D major pentatonic right there. You don't hear it as D major pentatonic because your ear is not hearing D as the tonal center or the point of resolution. You're hearing G. So you're hearing these notes related to G. So you end up, let's see, here's, so if you think about the D major pentatonic, what pattern do I want to do this in? Let's do it here because we know pattern 1 so well. So there's D major pentatonic, but I'm going to come over here to G. So let's look at the notes of D major pentatonic as they relate to G. So the D would be a 5th, and I'm going up the D major pentatonic scale. The D is a 5th of G. The E would be a 6th. The F sharp is a major 7th. And then you have a 2nd or a 9th, and then you have a 3rd, right? So you're playing over G, but you've got a 5th, a 6th, a major 7th, and a 9th. And so you're getting those great kind of added chord tones, right? You're getting the 6th, you're getting the major 7th, you're getting the 2nd or the 9th, and it just creates like notes. Think about notes of D over a G chord, so you're getting that major 7th, major 9 sound. There is a lot more that could be said about superimposing chords and scales, but again, just to review and these few examples, it's where you take one type of chord or scale, but you play it over another tonality to suggest a different type of tonality. So that's called superimposing, and it happens quite a bit actually in Cliffs of Dover. And what's interesting is that Johnson creates more complex sounds, but he's still just using basic major arpeggio patterns and pentatonic patterns. So he took something that is simple, but by superimposing, he created a sound that's more complex. So that just goes to show how important it is to know the cage system and how to make form all those different major arpeggio patterns all over the fretboard, how important it is to know pentatonic patterns, major scale patterns. You know, with major scale patterns, you can produce all the different modes. So a lot of guitar players make the mistake of assuming that if they want to play stuff that's kind of more complicated, that they'll skip all that simple stuff and they're going to go straight to something that's complicated. Well, the complicated stuff is just a combination of simpler things, or it's the result of how you apply simpler things. So you can never know your major and minor triads, your cage system arpeggio patterns, your pentatonic patterns, your major scale patterns. You can never know those well enough. There's so much that you can do. So, and remember, I teach all of that stuff in my books, Fretboard Theory, and I've got hours and hours and hours of instruction on my website where I teach you all about scales, chords, progressions, modes, music theory, and more. These free song lessons that I put on YouTube, they're actually intended to be supplemental to the courses that I sell on the website. So as you go through my training programs and you learn all of this stuff about music, you know, I reference popular songs throughout all the instruction, and instead of just telling you to go learn Cliffs of Dover or go learn Hotel California or go learn this song, I try to help you get started and provide some of those songs, some instruction on those songs, try to provide some to you. So that's why I put this stuff on YouTube. So if you're learning the free stuff on YouTube, that's fantastic, you know, but if you really want to learn all the ins and outs of music, you know, get into my books and instructional video programs. And by the way, when you purchase a book or video program, you're not just paying for the production of that, but you also support everything that I do. So if you're a fan of my YouTube videos or my blog posts or my podcasting, would you please consider purchasing a course, because that's what funds all of this. All right, well, I'm going to leave off with that. And if you have any questions about anything that we've covered here today, you can follow up with me on email or social media, and I'm happy to get back to you and answer any questions. If you got questions about any new topics, something that maybe you'd like to see covered in the next live lesson, you can send those as well. So until then, play until your fingers bleed. Bye.